Hello, and welcome to your perfectly on time and 100% recorded version of Indiepocalypse Radio. I'm your always on time host, Andrew, here to talk to you about video games, maybe? No, there was something I saw, something very weird I saw on my way here that I was like, I gotta say that to kind of get that thought out of my head, but I forget what it was now, and honestly I don't think it's probably that important anymore. But what is important is that we've got guests here. We've got three guests here, one in a pair, if you will. Our first guest, you may know. Do I know what? Oh no, I closed the ongoing saga of Andrew moving his Google Forms around and remembering which issue, from issue 31 of Indiepocalypse with 3 hours of style. It's Isabel, or also known as Wisp Potion. Hello, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing great. I was just with a bunch of friends. Now I'm sitting here, just vibing.
Oh, perfect. I'm going to be with a bunch of friends after this.
Not stressed at all.
No, not stressed at all. There may not have been a very extreme saga that predated the show being late that will not be discussed here. We don't need to get into... I like to not get into my private life necessarily. If you can take your parasociality somewhere else, someone else can tell you all about their kids or whatever. I don't have children. Don't care for them, or don't care for
the non-existent.
Them being around me all the time. Fun to visit. But my own seems like a lot. I'm bad with them. I'm too bad at not treating them just like they're adults, which I don't think you're supposed to do. I don't know, or maybe you are supposed to respect them and treat them as intellectual equals. I'm not sure.
Your kids.
Yeah,
I mean, you should definitely treat them as kids.
Yeah.
Just like they're small beings.
Yeah, there's so much to them. But anyway, enough of this. Enough of all that. I got to get the most important question out of the way. The question that people are dying to know. They were kicking down my DMs. They're like, Andrew, the show's late, and now I will never know the answer to this important question. Which is, Isabel, how did you hear about Indiepocalypse?
That's a very good question. I think I was just browsing itch, and I stumbled upon it, and I was like, this looks interesting. And I just ended up submitting. So I think that's kind of how I ended up here.
Oh, perfect. It's the organic way that a lot of people end up here. That is, that's what I'm hoping for. It's why I added, in parentheses, paying anthology. Hopefully get more people to... Because I noticed that game jams that had like prizes a lot of people were flocking to those. They had a lot of high entries, and then even though I've paid from the very beginning, I didn't always mention that up front or in the title. So I like
I think that definitely paid part of it. I think I might have just been browsing the jams page for coming up with new ideas, and I stumbled upon it.
Oh, perfect.
And I was like, I get paid for making games. This looks interesting.
Yeah, now did 3 hours of style exist before you saw Indiepocalypse? Like, was this a...
I made it during a game jam called Summer Slow Jams.
Okay,
I think they're called Pig Squads, the people who held that. And I think I stumbled upon Indiepocalypse about sort of at the end of that game jam, because I actually finished the jam before the deadline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, you must have had to. You did submit it after all.
I managed to submit it.
Yeah, which is a good thing to do. I highly recommend people submit stuff, because then like yourself, you can often get into it, which is a good thing. So speaking of 3 hours of style, what is for the listeners out there who may not know, who are like, what if I should buy this issue 31 of Indiepocalypse? What is 3 hours of style?
Well, it's how do I explain it?
I don't know. That's your job.
It's basically, imagine a fashion show but you're sort of fighting your way through in a grid-based combat system, and you're just like trying to bring your models through the catwalk. And of course, you're a rookie. You don't have any clothes prepared.
Right, yeah.
So you just sort of snatch clothes on the way and try to make it to the end and impress a certain character called the grandmother.
Perfect. Yes, that is. I could not think of a more concise way to do it. Occasionally, this one I've started recently asking people to describe their games, and I'm learning very quickly what games have been around for a long time, and what people have brought them to conventions and everything, because you can hear the familiar patter of someone who's explained something 60 times in a day. Versus someone's like, oh, I've thought about this thing for a long time, but I've never had to explain it to another person before.
Actually explain it.
Yeah. Which is like...
Oh, yes, definitely. It's really fun to have people sort of ask you those questions because you haven't always thought about that. You just have to come up with that on the spot.
Right. It's like you come across that sometimes where even in your own native language, you have things that you don't have words, ideas that you don't have words or explanations for, but you understand very intimately.
You sort of it in the back of your head, but you can't really explain it, or at least you haven't thought about explaining it before.
Right. So it's like teaching someone how do you teach someone to walk? You're
exactly. Yeah.
You're like, well, I know how to do it. I do it everywhere, but I'm like,
I think.
No,
sorry, keep going.
No, go ahead. I'm here. My rule is that I'm here every week. You're only here this week.
I mean, so I'm working. I'm a student to begin with.
Yeah.
I just recently turned 18, and I'm working on my sort of final project, which is to make a bunch of small games. And the one that I'm doing currently, I think I ended up. The goal from the start was to create a game where you used sort of a computer terminal to then interact with the computer and manage to decrypt a file.
Yeah.
To get your grandpa's testament or last will, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But then I ended up not actually liking that idea, and then slowly that morphed into I take the systems out of Doom Eternal. I take the resource management. How do I explain this?
Yeah.
I take those systems and then I make them turn-based, but I do it with cats.
Yes. Right. Okay. Yeah. No.
And I to actually formulate and to be able to explain that, I had to think quite a long time. Today I was on a walk and just this is interesting.
Yeah, I think.
So I ended up. So I ended up writing down that, and that's why I actually can explain it now.
Yeah, that is it's I think the really interesting thing about getting more people who are making in a lot of small games and is this kind of making a bunch of little games is that you don't have to worry about a mechanic that will balance and work for 80 hours or whatever. It's this has to work for 30 minutes. So it can be this really weird thing kind of bolted together, but it survives for the 30 minutes just fine.
If it's good enough, then it's good enough.
Exactly, yeah. And then you don't have to worry about it being so you can get so many more weird mechanical experiments and mismatches and all this sort of stuff. Because you also
things are keep going.
Oh no, I was gonna say because you don't have to worry about this thing has to fund a studio for the next 6 years. This thing needs to pay people salaries. It's oh no, I made this as a project, and maybe I can charge people for it.
Yeah, I made it in 2 weeks, so it's
yeah.
If it falls into pieces, it's fine. It's probably 40 hours or something. I'm aiming to make it within 40 hours of actual work.
Yeah, that is I've been making little things and they are approximately maybe at cap out at 6 hours of work overall. Sometimes I stretch across a week because sometimes it's hard to find time in a day, but they're even non-games basically. They're the equivalent of a sketch, if you will, but their like sketch drawing style. That is not comedy performance. Though,
Yeah.
though people maybe should do more video game equivalent of sketch comedy.
That'd be fun.
Whatever that is, like these small really short kind of performative pieces.
I think Baba ECU is kind of doing that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because sometimes it has like a bit of a punchline to it, or puzzles and comedy have the same sort of set up expectations, subverting expectations.
Exactly. Yeah. You can sort of play with. You can really play with your expectations.
And then you're like really like thrown away, and you're like, oh, I get it now.
Oh, I can do this. That's interesting.
Right. It kind of reframes things in a way you hadn't thought about before, and like, or like, it's clearly like that's the tricky thing is like somebody thinking not like you're thinking is a interesting thing to experience, but when you have to think like they think to solve a puzzle, it becomes harder.
It becomes really interesting really quickly.
Yeah, especially with like very like a non-traditional system, but that has its own clear rule set instead of just like it's mildly different version of lining up colored boxes that will disappear.
Yeah. I mean, I think more developers. It would be interesting to see more developers kind of create games with that mindset, with the goal of just making the player laugh in some way.
Yes, yeah, no, one of my favorite games. I don't even know if it's playable anymore, or if like Unity web stuff killed it. Was I think it was called Tomb of a Thousand Snakes.
Okay.
It's if you can find it playable online. It's an old Arcane Kids thing. And Arcane Kids, are they doing anything anymore? I don't know.
I have no clue.
They did that Bubsy game. I think was the thing that got most popular of theirs. I believe that was Arcane Kids, right? Bubsy visits the Terrell Museum exhibits.
I have no clue.
Visits. I'm gonna type Bubsy. James Terrell retrospective. Is that an Arcane? Yeah, it is Arcane Kids. Are they still around? Who knows? Anyway. Or if they're like a loose collective. There's so many loose collectives going around.
They exist. They float around.
Yes. No. No official. It's one of those things where there's no official dissolution, but it would have been unofficially dissolved back in, let's say, 2017. Which for someone just graduating, maybe not quite. What were you doing back in 2010,
Oh, Jesus Christ. I barely remember 2012. Or 2010, for that matter.
Yeah,
I was 6 years old.
Right. So maybe you weren't. Maybe as a 6-year-old, you were not delving into the world of alternative games.
No, okay, that's actually a really funny thing about dubstep. And people begin to talk about 2012 dubstep, and I'm just sitting there like, yeah, sure, I was 8 or something. I had not discovered that Spotify was a thing.
Right, exactly. Right. When I was 8, Spotify wasn't a thing. I don't even think to show my listen. I'm allowed to show my age because I'm not some kind of 18-year-old wonderkind who's running this thing. Could you imagine if I started this thing at 15? My God.
Holy shit!
I would be. Well, I would be a kid with a lot of money probably, and that's how I'm allowed to do that. Like whenever you see like a 15-year-old started a business, and you see the second line is with a $15,000 loan from their parents.
Oh, ooh,
yeah,
ooh, that's bold.
You're right. It's always that second line of like I started this shoe company when I was only 16 years old because my grandfather gave me a $30,000 booster. It's like, wait a minute. Did you start it, or did your grandfather start it and just let you kind of muck around in it?
Yeah, do the money thing.
Yeah. Isabel, if you were a 12-year-old and you were given a bunch of money by your grandparents to start a business, what kind of business would you start?
Oh, oh, that is interesting. I don't know. Back when I was 12, I was probably like climbing trees at that point. Maybe I was kind of really into gymnastics at that point. Maybe something with that.
Okay.
Like, what can you do with the gymnastics? At this,
Besides opening like a studio. But like, I don't think a kid's thinking about opening a studio.
well, if you're 12, then maybe you could open a studio for someone who's like 8 or something.
Right. Someone's like, kid, let me show you the ropes real quick.
Isabel's gymnastics
Yes.
studio,
I can't
founded at the age of 12.
I can't reach the ropes because I'm 12. I need help, but I'll show them to you.
Please, the trampoline is too heavy for me to bring out. Help.
Yes. I have a step stool, so to make sure you don't want to get some really tall 8-year-olds kind of like dwarfing you and be like, oh, you need to earn the respect. They can't be taller than you.
You need to walk around in those what are they called? The high shoes.
Yes, yeah, like platform shoes.
Yeah, well, yeah, that or the high heels.
You're right. Yes.
Imagine.
I would
I
never do
mean,
gymnastics.
somebody doing gymnastics in high heels.
Yes, yeah.
That's that. You could definitely make a game out of that.
Yeah, is that Bayonetta? Is that what Bayonetta is?
I mean, that's Bayonetta. What is she called? Black Widow.
Yeah, that's empowering female protagonists. I think.
Yeah, you talk bad, you get to heal right through your chest.
Yeah, that is that the thing. It's the kind of thing you can do in movies where obviously that's why they don't shoot their feet all the time because they're not actually wearing heels when they're doing all the running around and and front flips.
Imagine somebody actually being able to do a front flip in high heels.
Yeah.
That is very impressive.
Yeah, because I feel like you need a lot of like ankle stuff to springboard yourself.
I mean, what you use is that's ankles and what is it called? The calves.
Yeah.
So you'll see that on every every gym does. They have massive, powerful calves.
Right, because
You come running and then you jump, and everything that you use is literally just calves, and then the rest of your body's completely stiff, basically.
right, because it's not you don't have you're not jumping off a trampoline. You're jumping off of your legs.
Oh yeah, in that case, whoa.
Yeah.
You need to be very strong.
You forget people when people do that when they're just jumping. Jump every now and then. If you're listening at home, if you're listening anywhere but your car, just jump real quick. Do a jump and see how high you can jump.
See if you can jump high enough to actually do a front flip. And then
Yes. Don't attempt a front flip.
Don't actually do the front flip, please.
Yes.
We don't want to be responsible for that.
No. Listen, I would not encourage my listeners to do a somersault, and that does not require you to leave the air at all, or leave the ground.
Please be careful when performing jumps.
Yes, jumps, flips, any kind of gymnastic routine. Make sure you're flexible and ready to go. Don't need. I feel like
warm up kits.
Yeah, I feel like this audience is I don't know what the listening audience is. I feel like a lot of contributors are like, they're fresh young kids who are like, I'm gonna shake up game design and do whatever I want, but. I wonder if the listeners are like old people who are gonna mess themselves up with their little front flips.
Oh, poor things.
Yeah, R.I.P. to all the olds whose backs get broken because of Indiepocalypse. And I forget
Indiepocalypse claims no responsibility for any somersaults done during the show.
No, of course not. And I forget sometimes that I'm in my 30s because I'm like, I'm on the cutting edge in terms of following artists, and I tend to speak to a lot of younger people just through Indiepocalypse. I'm like, and I feel more aligned with that. when I see people making fun of millennials, I'm like, yeah, they are terrible. They are weird. They are real. I remember once on TikTok, or someone was like referring to just like millennial attitudes as like real.
Yeah.
Millennials have real Harry Potter house energy of like. That's something a millennial would know. I'm like, yeah, they would know that. I hate those guys.
There's just it's kind of scary to me.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it was long ago that the millennials were sort of because I'm in Sweden, we
Yeah.
have gymnasium instead of high school or whatever. And doesn't feel like it was that long ago that they were in gymnasium and I was fiddling around in like middle school or prep school, I guess.
Yeah, that's the secret of life. It just comes at you real fast. or it doesn't. Like people say that, but I'm like, I feel like I experience like every minute of every day, and I feel like I'm doing so much in a day that every day feels so massively long. So I
Yeah, some days really do feel like they're an eternity, and others are just like, oh yeah, that one 5 minutes. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
that was done.
Yeah, so I haven't felt like that. That like that is a feeling of, you know, oh wow, time is like every when people are like, oh, I got older and every year feels like a month. I'm like, no, every day feels like 24 hours. I'm living in it. Yeah, I'm carping that diem every day. But speaking of,
use every second.
yeah. Speaking of time and the relative shortness of time, Isabel, we are at the end of our time already.
Ooh.
It's already been. We've already hit about 22 minutes, which, if you account for my kind of rambling up at the top, is our 20-minute segment.
Yeah. Okay. Nice.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. We didn't even talk about the fact that you make music.
Oh yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate that.
No, I'm glad to have you here, both on the show and in the zine, and just in general. I think.
Thank you.
I think you're even like the second Pico 8 game, which is like. I gotta get a little more of that Pico 8, you know. I think these little bite-sized engines are very cool, and I think people do a lot of cool stuff in them within those restrictions.
Yeah, you know, restrictions breed creativity.
Exactly.
You have to think in new ways.
Yeah. When you can only draw on a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, suddenly, you know, your limited canvas.
You have to come up with new things.
Right, when you can't control Z your way through everything, you have to. It's just on the page.
Yeah.
But don't control Z this web page. I think. Don't leave it is what I'm trying to say, because we'll be back in like 2 minutes and 43 seconds. Thank you again, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. That was Twilight. Or no, wait, no, wait. That was The Trek. There we go. I was like, wait a minute. I was reading this wrong. That was The Trek by our guest that was just odd, Wisp Potion. We can find that stuff online. And it's the fun stuff about, I've talked about this in the pre-show with guests where you couldn't hear, but the fun stuff of just playing out my guest music is that I don't have to edit it out of the song. You can just listen to that in the archives as well. And you should, because I think the music I play on this is good. Just, I don't know a lot of the people who often play it from. But speaking of people I do know, very briefly, you may know from issue 29 of Indiepocalypse, or we'll call it Indiepocalypse 29-32, maybe, and other places around the game sphere with Apocryphana. It's Valerie and Claire. Valerie and Claire, how are you doing today?
We're doing great, and congratulations on saying Apocryphana correctly and spelling it correctly in the description. It's a 12-letter word that is a made-up word. So.
Like
Yeah.
Indiepocalypse?
Oh, that's also true. Yeah.
I have a lot of practice.
Yeah, we're just the massive overlong portmanteau crew in here.
Yeah.
When you were talking, when you were coming up with like name suggestions, and you said Apocryphana, I was just like, this is the one that we're going to go with.
After a brief brain blue screening, probably at that wall of letters. So.
Well, it's one of those things. I think it's it's very easy to say. Actually, it's just it's one of those things where your brain has to say it first before you realize it's actually easy to say.
Yeah.
It's a lot of like visual like letter salad, but once you say it, it's got such a nice mouth feel.
Yeah, it flows right off Apocryphana. It's got a great sound to it and a great it's got a great look to it too. The game we're talking about here. So I guess because since Apocryphana was a commission game, I don't get to ask the had you heard of, or had you? So I have to ask my question 1B, which is, had you heard of Indiepocalypse? I don't remember.
Actually, so I you approached me.
Yeah.
I had, but I have this sort of nasty habit of like not playing any games, even though I know a lot of people who make games and like, contribute to stuff. I just it's difficult to I'm always erring on working on a project. Like I'm always working on something else that I just don't give myself the mental space to really get into something. So I have heard of Indiepocalypse. Several friends and stuff have contributed to it, but I have not I've never really dug into it.
I always thought it was funny when I'm sort of new to this game development world. Valerie's my girlfriend, and when we started dating, she was always telling me about, oh, this person, they're my friend, they made this game and this game, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Are those good games? Are they fun? She's like, I don't know, I never played their games. And like over and over again with a lot of her friends, and I was like, and she was like, I was like, what? She's like, oh, that's just kind of how it is. Like everybody's so busy with their own games, like nobody plays each other's games. And I'm like,
can I share? I'll share a secret with you too. Aside of games that I curate for Indiepocalypse, I don't play that many. Just like random indie games off to the side. Even though I am also even deeper immersed in all this.
Mm-hmm.
I will even sometimes it might even take me like a month or two to get to a game that I commissioned, because I'm like, I'm like, I gotta go forward. I gotta keep working on stuff. I'm like, oh, game's done. I don't have to worry about it. And like, then I'll play it 2 months later. I'm like, wow, that game ruled.
I feel like I need to, as a just one of the things that I kind of harp about is giving yourself space to do the playing and the relaxing and taking a break as part of the sort of like creative process of making games is allowing yourself to do that. And that is not something that I have taken myself up on. I'm just kind of like, trying to doing work and working on something, or doing nothing.
Yes. I played the newest version of Indiepocalypse that was out at the time when the newest issue when we were commissioned.
Yeah.
And I think maybe one other issue as well. But I have not actually played a lot of the stuff in the one that we came out with, like our kind of the games and
Yeah. Like the one you got, like the like your compatriots. Uh-oh. Okay.
is some of the ones that came out along with us.
Yeah, I lost you there for a second, but you're back.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I want to check out all the ones of the people that came out with us.
Right. Yeah, there's I say like, oh, there's some good. Of course, there's good ones in there. I think they're all. I would not. I've had people feel like, oh, I can't believe like you let me think. Like, listen. If I thought a game was bad, I would not include it in this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, these are all actually. One of these just had like a whole article in Guardian about it.
Oh, wow.
What's up in the Kharkiv bomb shelter about games being made in Ukraine?
Oh wow!
And because that's what that game is about, and it's a very cool, very cool little game. So it's like, and that's the power of like that, because that game was like made in Bitsy, and it's the power of a low taxing engine. That you can make games in the let's call them the least desirable of circumstances. But speaking of games being made and games you have made, tell me and the wider audience a little bit about Apocryphana. And if you're telling me about it right now, I can't hear you.
So their internet connection is doing well?
I'm not sure. Hello, Valerie Claire, are you there? Can you hear me? Can you?
Yes, I can hear you guys fine. Can you hear us?
I just heard you just then asking if I could hear you. But if you're going again, I can't hear you. I wonder if it's like a shared microphone sort of gating thing.
Mute ourselves, and then our thing is going green, so it's receiving our audio on Discord.
This was one of the things where it's like, oh, it's perfect. Everything in the pre-show was perfect. But that's the beauty of internet radio.
Meow, meow, meow. Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you now.
Okay, let's try again. Sorry about that.
No, it happens sometimes.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, you were just you cut out a little bit, but were you just at the usual starting question of tell us about Apocryphana?
Tell me about
it. Is that the basic gist?
Yeah, what's Apocryphana all about? Let's say
Apocryphana is a sort of first-person adventure game. It's like a kind of lo-fi 3D exploration game where you are a student in a sort of highly restrictive religious boarding school, and you were kicked out of your last school for mysterious circumstances, and as part of that, your collection of trading cards was taken away. You play a collectible card game called Apocryphana, sort of a Magic the Gathering / Pokemon game. And this will not stand though, and so your goal in the game is to rebuild your collection of cards by exploring the school, finding hidden stashes of cards that other students have hidden away, or by doing favors for other students, and then they'll like reward you by giving you cards. But this card game is forbidden in the school because the nuns who run it say it's like satanic. And as you collect more and more cards, you start to experience some strange, unexplainable events that hint that maybe these cards really are a little magical or a little satanic, and maybe there is something going on with them.
Yeah. It kind of like it's kind of like invoking that sort of like feeling of like back in like, well, we're gonna age ourselves a little bit, but like, you know, back in the 90s where you would have like these TV like preachers talking about Pokemon and telling people how like evil it was and stuff like that. That was the kind of thing that we were like invoking in terms of like, this is the fiction behind their feeling the school, the institution's feeling about the card game.
Yeah, and it's like and honestly, if you are an indie game design, if one could be an indie game designer in the 90s, you know, it would be like that would be like a contemporary aesthetic for that, even instead of a lo-fi aesthetic, because that is just got. I mean, listen, we're well overdue for another Satanic Panic. I feel like we're on our way. You know, they call it something different, but it's definitely still kicking around.
Totally, yeah. And there's also some stuff in the game, not to give away too much of it, but about the feeling of not feeling connected to your culture at large, and feeling weird solace and connection to fictional monsters due to not fitting in for a variety of reasons, and part of it is, spoiler alert, queerness of one form or another.
Oh, are you saying?
Which is not necessarily a spoiler because you learn it pretty fast in the game.
Yeah,
and it's us making it. So what would you expect?
Queerness in an indie game? Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it has a lot of because you're middle school age, you're figuring out who you are. It has a lot of big feelings.
Yeah.
It has a lot of like gender stuff that we took and were like, this is the way that they might be dealing with that in the school, the sort of like inner conflicts and stuff like that. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of like, you know, big feelings from teenagers and
and it's I think a thing that we were trying to evoke, since it's like sort of a period piece, is that people don't say, like, the word transgender doesn't come up in the game, and people don't talk about it in the proper ways that people should today. The language is sort of like imprecise and almost offensive at times, but like intentionally so, because like that's how people talked about it in the like late 90s, early 2000s.
Right. Even though
this is the words that people would have used when we were in middle school, you know. So
right.
Not like slurs or anything.
No, just kind of clunky, imprecise language and stuff like that.
Even the polite language of the 90s would be we get people kind of like some people up in arm. It's just like it was a different time, even in like the best of times, you know. The at least like publicly. I mean, you know, listen. It's just this thing you gotta tell everyone. All this, all this stuff has existed forever, but the internet makes
the best you could hope for was like, oh, woman trapped in a man's body.
Oh yes, right, yes, yeah, exactly. Precisely, which is like a very like they're gesturing towards the same idea, but they're saying it in a very clunky 2-decade-old way.
Yeah.
And that same person who might have said that back then would not say would like, oh, I can't believe I used to say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the characters are, I would say, generally pretty sweet.
Yeah.
And it's got a lot of wholesome, despite some of the like heavier topics in it. And just the writing, I'm really happy with that. That's the writing is Claire's doing, and she did a bang up job with it, I think.
Yeah, one of the kind of initial things that we were wanting to do when we came up with this game was come up with something that would allow me and Valerie to each do roughly equal work. I still think Valerie ended up doing a lot more work than I did.
Well, video
but
games are their
where-
own beast.
Right, where there was like a strict division of labor, like, okay, you're doing this stuff, I'm doing this stuff. And so what we settled on is I was doing the writing and all of the 2D art assets.
Yeah.
So all of the characters in the game are 2D sprites that rotate to auto face you rather than being 3D models. And so that it kind of evokes the feeling of like Doom or whatever, which used that technology, but not in a shooter.
Right.
And so that allowed us to, instead of having Valerie have to make 3D models for everything, because I can't make 3D models, I can just draw little cartoon dudes, and like that's all the characters, and then I do all the writing, and then Valerie does the 3D modeling stuff and the programming in Unity for the actual game itself. And yeah, but I still think that Valerie did a lot more work. Spent a lot more time on it, doing a lot more work than I did. But yeah, it was cool. And then the other thing that was fun that we didn't realize until we were partway through it was, since part of the game is that you're collecting all of these trading cards, that provided a chance for us to have a lot of guest artists contribute art for cards. Because like I did over half of the cards, but we have a lot of other friends who are illustrators or like, you know, game developers and stuff like that, and they could contribute art. We just like make up a weird little monster, and then and so like, you know, a little less than half the cards in the game were from various guest artists.
Yeah, and I think a lot of artists, if you encourage them to make a weird little monster, they are going to be more than glad to make a weird little monster.
Oh yes,
Absolutely. Kind of going back a little bit in terms of the cards, they're all very different from each other, and that was one of kind of like our initial like sort of creative like conflicts in the beginning of planning this game out, whether or not we wanted to have them be like consistent in terms of the style, or whether we wanted them to be very dramatically different.
Yeah, I was originally pushing for them to be a really unified aesthetic. Like, okay, here's the style of the game. This is the art style for all of the cards. But Valerie then showed me a whole bunch of cards from like first generation Pokemon, like the early Pokemon TCG, and there's just no consistency.
No,
it's like this one has lines, this one's just colors, this one's like a 3D model, and like this one has an actual background drawn, and this one is just like a Photoshop create.
That's what I loved about old, and they're getting back into it with like Magic cards, where it's like there wasn't a house style; it was kind of like an artist brought their own style.
Right. Right.
Which is like, it's just both things have their upsides and downsides, and I'm a little freak who like to see a bunch of weird styles, but also you can see how
but it ended up.
Whoa. I lost you again.
Game to land diversity in a certain sense of like, you know, just variety and all of that stuff. So.
Yeah. And also, it also gave us room to, for each of us to be able to create cards. Her workload was designing the cards, and you also did the the text, and we kind of like figured out like a sort of like internal logic for the card game, since the game isn't about playing the card game, it's about collecting them. uh um
Oh,
the game
like
isn't meant
Pokemon.
to be played.
What's that?
I was saying like Pokemon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Pokemon not meant to be played.
Yeah, well, I think that part of it is like, we were, we I just had the idea of like, oh, you know, finding these trading card games, and I was like, oh, people are probably going to want to play the card game then, and they might be disappointed if they can't play the card game.
Yeah.
So what I had, my like solution to that was, I need to make the text on the cards so ridiculous and so inconsistent from one card to the next that no one could look at all of these cards and think there was a way that they're all played together.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's like, and then, you know, maybe it would sting a little bit less if if we don't have like this whole robust, you know, card battle system game thing going on in it.
Yeah, there are some like little bits of like logic in the cards. Like you'll see like different symbols that mean different things, and some of the cards will use particular like words and terminology to.
I did technically come up with a rule set for how the game is played. But.
Yeah. But yeah, the because we had decided on doing different art styles, it also led us to be able to I could make cards,
Mm-hmm.
and then we could get guests to make cards, which made it just it was a lot more fun to make the cards,
And more communal in a certain way.
Yeah. And we got like a much greater variety of like interesting looking cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I am I have maybe unsurprisingly a huge proponent of, hey, just let artists go wild and let them do their own thing.
Yeah.
That is my underlying philosophy of just like give them like say I need you to draw a monster. Aside from that though, hey, you're on your own. You just do whatever you want. And I'm looking here. And I looked at your page because I have secret password access to the page, so I can look at the artists. I'm like, I know these artists. I know at least 3 of them off the top, just right away. The 3 with itch pages, I know right away.
Yep.
And,
So the artists that guest contributed cards were JoJo Seams, who made we have a card called Roger. She's a local artist.
She's done a lot of really good stuff though. She's she's done a lot of cards for MetaZoo actually.
Yeah.
And she stopped working with them a little while ago and was like, there was this weird thing where she's like wanting to make like an awesome card. She's like to show MetaZoo. She said it was not really, not actually, but like it was like a weird thing of like, I think it was like wanting to one up. It felt like in a certain way, and I was like, hey, I'll take a spite card. That's fine.
Yeah. We have another local artist friend here, Melissa, who made it's the
Morn Tree, and that card is gorgeous. It's like one of my favorite cards in the game.
It is. Yeah, it is so cool. It's very very like eldritch horror.
Yeah.
Then we had Quinn, who made an Outcry, and
yes, noted friend of the show.
Yeah, her newest her newest game is gosh, I'm bad with things.
There Swings a Skull.
There Swings a Skull, which I play tested. Which is excellent game.
card with a lot of different names. Some of them have weird properties that they change when you click on them multiple times or look at them, and so her card is a little different from time to time depending on how it's feeling.
Yeah, and that's one of the treats you can do with digital art.
Yeah. That was a fun thing where like midway through we suddenly realized, oh wait, we could like do weird stuff with the cards where and it's spooky and they can kind of not they don't have to be actual cards. They can like do weird things. So
Yeah, like one of the cards is like literally hand drawn on an index card. Other cards will have like weird effects when you like look at them, and other cards will just change on their own. So yeah, it was a lot of fun making this, and it was a lot of fun making like the sort of puzzles that you have to do in order to get some of the cards.
yeah, it was the sort of thing too where like a thing that I liked about the concept early on was that this could be a very short game or a very long game, and we have a kind of medium length version of it. But we could easily have made a version that was like 4 times as long, you know, in terms of all of the stuff you have to do, or it could have been half the length.
It's the threat of making art.
Right? Yeah. But I think it's nice to do a game that's not like, oh, it has to be this exactly, or we can't release it. You know,
right. It's nice to have
because I think if you're making something in the real world, it's cool to have a concept and like a skeleton and a game design skeleton that is somewhat flexible and has a lot of elements that can be added or removed depending on how long things take and scope creep and stuff. You know, it's nice to have stuff that you can ditch. So
yeah, have like right. So it's like you can not. I mean, the short version you trim levels, but it's not like actual levels. It's more like you just trim design elements or story beats, but like your core is there. It's like a toolbox that you are using. But us.
So looking at the time,
yes, you are someone's ahead of me. Where I was just about to say that. How did you know? Was it me flailing towards a?
I am also a podcaster, and I'm very aware of things, and I just wanted to make sure I didn't want to Isabel out. So you
know. No, that is. I sometimes go over. I always go overtime on this show. That is the hallmark of the show is me going overtime. But I like to try to keep the guest segments equal. So, Valerie Claire, thank you for being on the show. You will be back very soon.
yeah.
But in the meantime, I would like to issue a correction. That first song was called Out of Splash. This next upcoming song is called The Trek. I had just I accidentally did a capital W and a capital I, and I was correcting the capital I on the second word when the first. Anyway, I want a break. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. That song was actually the track by Wiz Potion. I got it all in order this time. I gotta listen for as chaotic as this day was for me. I made very few mistakes, so I'm gonna give myself a pass for that real quick. But we are back here with everyone. Everyone's here. All the guests are here. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
This is the part of the segment or the part of the show where I go to the question thing and I refresh it and I go, no questions, and I close it. And then I assure my guests, there's very rarely questions, so it's nothing to worry about.
My answer is yes.
Yeah. Questions are usually for, I found historically, visual novel makers get a lot of questions. Like, people get very passionate about some visual novels. It's hard, impossible to know which ones, but whenever I get a lot of questions, that's what it's for.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. Because, sometimes you'll see some of them have been, like, translated into, like, 6 languages, and they're free games.
Wait, sorry. You played Out and Splash first?
Sorry, what was that now?
Did you play?
Yes, I played Out of Splash. Yes, I did play Out of Splash first. Out and Splash.
That is.
Yeah.
Oh, that's old. That's old by now.
Old, you say? 2021.
Old by my standards.
Yes, right. If you've been making music for 3 years and a song is 1 year old, how long have you been making music?
Shit, I know I programmed in Scratch for the first time when I was 13. That was like 5 years ago. I probably have done music for 4.
Okay. Yeah. So
I actually started out making music for games specifically, and then I ended up just loving it so much, so I started doing it on its own too.
Yeah, that's like if everyone's avenue into games is a different kind of like. Well, I just kind of want to. I like them. I want to make them myself. So. It becomes increasingly easier to do and more cost viable to do.
Yeah, for every new generation, I guess.
Yeah, because Pico 8 does not require, for instance, a real extreme computer with the best graphics card.
No, I mean I'm actually because I have a problem with the sort of common engines being just so bulky and heavy to use. I found a really tiny one called Defold. It's in quite active development, and it's very, 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 very tiny, but it has all the stuff you need. So
yeah,
I ended up falling into that, and you could probably run that on any potato.
Right. Fine. Game engine needs to do 2 things: can you make a little guy, and can you make him run around?
Exactly. That's all that's required.
And if it can do that, you're good. I mean, ultimately, that's...
Ultimately, what is a game except making a little guy and then making him run around?
Right.
Exactly. Do you know about interactive music albums?
Kind of. I think someone submitted something very recently that they kind of called sort of like an interactive album.
I feel like those sound like cool words.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen some stuff like that on various like YouTube channels of like either like visualizers or I believe I watched a streamer play a game from an artist, and the game was to the album's like cover song or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was looking at issue 32, Disco EP. Is described as a video game concept album.
Very cool.
And
Bill, could you give us a definition? I'm curious. Of like, what does a interactive album mean?
Well, basically, you take a music album and you give people the ability to sort of poke and mess around with it. the simplest. You could actually count rhythm games as an interactive music album, just because you're hearing the music and simultaneously you're sort of interacting, maybe not with it, but you're definitely taking part in it. So, having
Are
stuff,
there any
I think
examples
somebody.
that you really
I
like?
don't. I don't actually have any examples because I just saw somebody doing a VR thing in passing.
Yeah, I think you might something like Res. I think is close to that conceptually, perhaps,
Oh,
or
Ooh.
or his other what's the other one with the whale in it? Something child of something perhaps, but like these kind of like rail games that are like they're kind of rhythm games, but not quite. But they're like interactive music experiences. Well,
Yeah, it's actually becoming a thing that I'm seeing sort of all over the place. Well, not all over the place.
Right,
Some
right.
examples. Just games that actually synthesize the music during the game and where the music is focused. Sort of all the attention is on the music.
Yeah, it's very much like an early space that you can like, and that's the exciting thing about kind of new spaces, that there is no concrete definition.
like,
I mean, yeah, it's definitely as tools for making games making interactive media and tools for making music have become so much easier to access, and everybody can learn to do both now. That's not a very difficult thing.
yeah, it's
Well,
weird.
it's a difficult thing to do well. Yeah, sorry, continue.
Right, yeah. I do so many different types of art. I studied illustration in college, and I've done writing, and then I got into game stuff, and then I also do podcasting. And so I basically do like every type of art except for music. That's like the one thing I haven't really gotten into. But I love music and I kind of want to, but I'm like, no, I can't also get into. I mean, maybe I could, but like, I feel the siren song, and I've tried a couple times, and I realized like, oh, this is going to be a whole thing, because it took me years and years to get good at like illustration and stuff like that, or writing.
Right.
So
I think for me as well, I am not a musician. I have no sense of like rhythm or timing or anything like that. So if I make music for something, it's just like ambient weird noise on a loop. But I find you had said something about accessibility that kind of like resonated with me, and it's that the way it's kind of one of the things that I say to people who are who want to start making games. The kind of primary difference between those who make games and like game developers and everybody else is merely just that, making games, and you can kind of just get started, you know. There's obviously the having time to spend on making a thing is a huge barrier, but like people are just very capable of like learning and growing and picking up these new skills. You just have to spend a little bit of time. So like for music, I've not given myself the time to really like get into it. But yeah.
I love the sentiment of that, because that's something that I keep very close to my heart, and that's everyone's ability to be able to learn basically everything.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
while you like for example, to learn guitar, you just need a guitar and you need the time. There's no magic. It's just time and effort. And the fact that the same goes for games, I just really appreciate that, because that means that the people who are in games, there's no privilege there at all. It's who have really spent their time, and people who do games well, that's people who just know what they're doing, and they have learned a lot. It just kind of impresses me.
Yeah. There's it. Like I said, time is always going to be like like a particular commodity, but like you it's not like it is not like this person is more like intellectually gifted than another person. Some people have like their own kind of like strengths. Like music does not come easy to me. 2D art does not come easy to me. But just kind of like figuring out how to like learn stuff.
Yeah, and I think that with games, there's such a wide breadth of what a game can be that there's some version of making a game that everyone can do. You know what I mean? Whether it's a Twine game or whatever, and even if you don't have a lot of time or whatever, there is a version of it of all of these things that is accessible, and everybody's got a little bit of time, you know.
Yeah.
So and they don't have to be big. You can make a game that is a thing you can beat in 5 minutes, and is like, you know, there are also a lot of free assets out there. There's a ton of free music. Most of the music in Apocryphana is free music we found online. Also sung by a friend of mine, a guy named Hashmay Lloyd. He's had Oh Snap It's Hash on YouTube. He makes really good electronic music. But yeah, like if you just either look at stuff online or make some friends, you can get assets. Whatever stuff you can't do, you don't have to do that. Like whatever is the part that scares you. I think I had an art teacher who said once that like style is avoiding the things you can't do. Like when it comes to like your artistic style, it's like, what's the stuff I can't do? Well, that's my style. Like so.
Right.
And games is sorry. And making games is all about like finding finding ways to sort of like create this sort of illusion of like having things put together. So like there's gonna be like holes and stuff and whatnot, but like the brilliance is like finding creative ways to make those things less obvious, I guess.
I mean, I guess game development is turning from, if you take it, I'm not speaking from experience, but if you take it way back in time, where you were just sitting at a computer, basically just generating the bleeps and bloops yourself, we're talking 90s here.
Yeah.
Back then, because you were doing literally everything yourself, and you were at such a low level, and the assets were quite easy. Well, not easy, but they were quite simple to make. So you had your small sprites and you had your bleeps and bloops, and that was kind of it. Now, when we have the ability to create so much more complex things, and in so many different mediums, you have audio, you have visuals, you have the whole mental shenanigans, psychology stuff going on, then it's turning into sort of a management thing. And I think that's really interesting too, because now you have to think about all these moving pieces and you have to stitch them together to get a cohesive game. And it's in the upcoming 10 to 20 years, I'm really interested in seeing where games can go, because there's so much that you can do now. It's just, it's amazing to me.
Yeah, and it's become so much easier for just like any person also to do, like, you know, maybe in 3 years Unreal will require maybe 2 potatoes, you know, but still nothing too complex.
A little short aside about Unreal was I was thinking about when you were talking about that other engine that you were using,
Default.
Isabel.
Yeah.
What was it again?
Defold.
Okay, yeah, I was just I was thinking about Unreal Engine when you were describing that, and it being like just very, very bloated on my somewhat modern laptop. And, to almost be like unusable for me, and I was like, I wanted to like experiment with like other engines and stuff, but I don't think it's gonna be Unreal.
Yeah, I definitely. I mean, I'm mainly. This is probably odd to say from someone who's done so much music, but I'm mainly a programmer. That's what I do the
Okay.
best, and that's what I do. Sort of. That's I love that a lot. Uh, and the problem I have with all the smaller engines, there's no type safety. So and it's very hard to document your code in a way
Yeah.
that's nice and fast to write. So from
Mhm.
Unity, I love that because C# is super safe, and you
Yeah.
can't mess it up basically. So and then we have smaller engines like Godot,
Mhm.
and I actually tried Godot, and I love the editor is 50 megabytes. Just that is very very nice. And then Defold is running Lua, which
Mhm.
is also not very type safe.
Yeah.
So it means that you really have to in all your files write at the top what it's doing. And
Mhm.
I'm lazy. I don't want to do that. I want things to be fast. I'm a teenager.
Mhm.
So I think I lost the thread.
No.
What was I?
It's okay.
Yeah. I excuse me. Um, I use I primarily use Unity, and I think one of the things that you mentioned that is just kind of like opposite, like I'm like the opposite of, is I can't do music and I can't program. I use Unity's Playmaker, which is like a visual scripting use.
Oh yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, I think Bolt is Unity's equivalent to visual scripting, and Playmaker is kind of like you use um uh actions and stuff like that. So you use like already like prefabricated bits of code, and you kind of like chunk them together and um
And just put everything together.
I'm assuming that is the case.
Poor internet
I
connection.
it is.
So yeah, we were talking earlier about how, oh yeah, kind of no matter what you can or can't do, you can still make a game.
Yeah.
Valerie programmed this game and she can't program. Like, not
It has been one of the contributing factors to the amount of extra work that I've had to put into
you're,
it.
you're kind of learning how to do it. There was a lot of stuff in this game that was stuff she had never done before, but
Yeah.
you did it and it was great. And like,
Yeah.
because there are workarounds and there are like tools to help and handles for
Mhm.
everything. And like, I think Playmaker's a really good example of that. Is that it kind of it's much more approachable in a lot of ways for someone who hasn't done this sort of programming before. Because Valve's made a lot of games, but there were a lot of like kind of subsystems and a lot of stuff going on in this particular game that when I wrote my lovely little design document, I did not realize were far beyond and very different from the sorts of games that Valve usually makes.
Yeah. I usually the stuff that I usually that I've made in the past have been like sorts of, I use this term affectionately, walking simulators.
Yeah.
So just kind of like experiential, exploration-y type games with very minimal mechanics. And then this game where you have to like you have puzzles and collecting and stuff like that.
Yeah, and like a lot of triggers you need to navigate around each other. that like don't trigger just when you're hitting a space. You have to talk to people, and you have to possess inventory items, and you have to.
Yeah. And there's a magic mirror that can trans your gender. So
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's 8 million little things all going around at once. That is complicating the core of the little guy running around, or maybe.
Yeah.
But
Or maybe not a little guy.
That's the beauty of the little guy. Like once the little guy starts walking around, is the little guy even a little guy, or does the little guy want to run around? The important
Does
question.
the little guy want to be a little guy?
Right, exactly.
Play the game to find out.
All the important questions that video games ask nowadays. Now that we don't have to worry about corporate interests, so we can start asking questions about the little guy.
Yeah, that's a very lovable thing about indies, because we can literally do whatever.
Yeah,
and we have platforms like itch.io that sort of allows that. And we can just we're making this game, we're gonna publish it. There's no one can complain about that.
Yeah, that might be a driving force of the talk of giving it an hour, is to be like, no one's stopping you from doing anything, really.
Exactly, just go do it.
Yeah, like there's no. I mean, maybe Steam won't let you on their platform or whatever, but who cares? Why would you want to be on it anyway? You release your thing. Listen, if I can't download a zip file and put it onto my computer, why am I even bothering? I've had people be like comment like, "Is this going to be on Steam?" And I'm like, "It's
why would it be?
It's a zip file. Why would you even want DRM when you can have a zip file?"
I would really love to have itch.io become more mainstream.
Yeah.
Not as in the game sense, but as in just the player's sense.
Yes.
Because currently it's sort of just developers. Well, the majority is developers, I think.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, because
I want the big player base on itch.io, because itch.io is amazing and I love it.
Yeah, you need that kind of like it is right now. Itch is very much like for artists,
Yeah.
It's very indie.
Yeah, it's like a bunch of friends looking at each other's works and not playing them, but thinking about them.
Yeah,
that's what you're talking.
Yeah, I think.
But I will say, hey, speaking of actually playing people's games, Quinn is in the chat, and I'll play an Outcry, and it's freaking great.
Yeah,
that's the ones I did play. And it fucking rules.
I myself will dip into a Domino Club or two when they get released, but otherwise, I very rarely make exceptions outside of. I think it's actually, honestly, outside of like Domino Club, I very rarely will just like, I'm gonna play an indie game for fun, because
I will say as little as I give myself space to play games just in general, and itch games slightly more so than that. I have to say my favorite games are on itch. Like my favorite horror game is an itch game.
Yeah, I went to play. I think the closest to like a AAA game that I played a little while ago was when I played Control.
Right.
And I was like, oh, this is kind of neat. And I'm like, wait, why is there like crafting in this game? This doesn't need to be here. And like this weird like leveling progression skill tree bullshit. And I'm like, what? And I just like, I want to go back to playing indie games. I don't need all this bullshit.
You're hitting on one of the two questions I constantly ask myself when playing a game, which is why is there crafting and why is this a roguelike?
Yes. Oh well. Hey, every game should be a roguelike. You take that back.
No, I'll never take that back. I was never more disappointed than when I was sitting around in a rainy Toronto hotel and I downloaded Kingsway and it turned out to be a roguelike.
No.
And I was like, oh my god, this game looks so cool. Why is it run based? Why can't you just make a linear game that I don't know. I think there are plenty of fun roguelikes, but I think it feels like a crutch sometimes.
Yeah, there is a saturation of roguelikes, but I will say
Not me. I'm a dry piece of bread, and I need to soak it all up. Give me all that roguelikes. I'm gonna sop it all up.
I got bad news for you with wet bread and what happens to it.
Well, I will say
Hell yeah, Quinn.
yeah. I will say I will say you have good taste in your roguelikes. You're not like every game should be a roguelike.
No, every game should be a roguelike.
And I have my heart a roguelike I want to make. Like none of us are immune to propaganda, as they say.
Yeah.
But
no, I'm just kidding with you, Val.
Yeah.
But yeah.
but I have
I roguelike now.
But anyway,
Did we do it?
we did it. We got it.
Great.
You knew that was the show's closing anyway.
What? I can tell it anyway. I know
Yeah,
that kind of.
that was a we're closing because I got an email earlier
You
this
got a
morning.
speedway?
Earlier this morning that was like, make sure you contact us an hour before your presentation to get things ready, and then we're getting close to an hour before my presentation. So knowing my
we're
propensity,
looking out for you.
yeah, knowing my propensity to kind of ramble and not let shows end, I'm ending it now. Valerie, what have you got to promote, and where do people find your stuff?
Me? Apocryphana, it's on Indiepocalypse, and in the next couple of days it'll be out on itch standalone. We meant to do it, we meant to release it not on Thursday, but now we gotta fix some stuff.
Yeah, had a release party, caught a few last minute bugs at the release party, and we're like, oh, let's give this a couple more days.
Yes.
Some brand new bugs that came out of nowhere. They were very exciting.
I will
very
say
exciting and interesting bugs.
Everybody like really seemed to like it.
Yeah. We had a good time.
It was a blast.
Yeah. The little bit of it I demoed. So there was one guy. That's the fun thing. Now I do not take this as a judgment on your game. This is like Indiepocalypse does not mesh with crowds often at video game conventions. It's kind of weird, but
Yeah.
a guy was like, "Are you open for feedback?" And I was like, "Nope, did not make it." It's basically done, and also I did not make it. And then I imagine stewed for the next 10 minutes while he played the game.
That's the correct response.
Yeah. I love that. I love that so much.
And then as he was leaving, he said like a bunch of things, and I forgot what they were.
Okay, great.
I'm at Valerie dash dusk itch.io or whatever.
Yeah.
It's Valerie dash dusk instead of yeah.
Yeah, if you want to follow me, I'm at Claire Mulcairn on Twitter, at Clairemulkerin.
The podcaster's spelling. Perfect.
Yeah. My tagged tweet, my pinned tweet is a link to a game I made called Heartfire, which is a top-down pixel art shooter about gay dragons in space. I also, on my itch page, my itch name right now is Crystal Femme, Crystalfem. It's a Steven Universe joke and also a lesbian joke. If you check me out there, I also have a game that I made that is a role-playing game about that is designed to turn you trans through the act of playing it. It is called Transatlantis. It's about transgender sky pirates in the 22nd century. And you should check it out. There will be a second edition of that coming out soon. The first version that's on there right now is a Game Jam version that's a little janky, but there will be,
Have played it multiple times. Very good. I will also say I am trans.
Yeah. That's why you played the game.
Yeah.
It mission accomplished, as they say. Wisp Potion. Isabel, I'm burying the lead here, or I'm jumping the gun. Where can people find your stuff?
Well, I'm called the Whist Potion everywhere. That's Whist as in wisdom, but with the T instead for reasons. And then Potion as in the Minecraft potion.
Yeah, and folks, it's good.
Just shove that together.
Yeah, and folks, it's good SEO. Just type it in, you'll get it.
Exactly. Yeah, because nobody else is using it.
Yeah.
But I exist on like itch.io and Spotify and probably all other
SoundCloud, everywhere.
And not really on social media because I don't do that because lazy.
It's a beautiful thing to not do. You're on Shazam.
Probably, maybe.
No, that it is. It was on the front page. I saw that like Shazam.
Oh, it is. That's very cool. I did not know that. But if I may, if somebody is interested in working with me or just doing something funky, as in game jams and stuff, just send me an email, whistpotion@gmail.com, and I'm always up for stupid stuff.
Yes,
I have too little things to do.
Yeah, indie people like there's so many more collectives springing up every other day. I'm all about just like it's like when you look at an indie band's Wikipedia page and it has roughly 6,000 members because everybody is in everybody else's indie band. And let's do some more of that weird cross-pollination in games,
Yeah,
totally.
Speaking of me and cross-pollination, Indiepocalypse, I'd recommend you buy it. It's a cool thing, I think. If you buy...
It has games. Have you heard of those?
Yes.
Do you like video games? This has those.
Yes, it's got 10 of them, and some of them are tabletop games. You might have heard of those earlier in the show.
Sounds suspicious. I don't trust them.
The last commissioned game was a tabletop game by Takuma Okada. It's about visiting old places, and that's all I'm going to tell you because you need to buy it yourself to experience it. If you buy issues 29 and 23, these people here, if enough of you buy it, these people here will get money.
Yay!
It doesn't come up very often, but I like to think it's a nice thing when you get that weird PayPal message that says Indiepocalypse and $7.33 or whatever. You might think, yes, a burrito. Just
yes, please. Please do the magazine though, because the developers are really getting paid, and it's super good.
Yeah, I had a long discussion with someone in a car today about why I pay people up front. And I'm like, I think it's important culturally to pay people for their work.
Yeah.
It creates a sense of like, oh, I actually should be getting paid for this stuff rather than everything being for free. Speaking of people getting paid for their work, I myself just put out something. I do this sometimes too, actually.
Hooray!
It doesn't come up very often, but I put out it just in time for the October season. I myself made a tabletop RPG called Scrawled in Blood, based on the idea of it's a survival horror style game because I got kind of obsessed with the idea of the journals that people leave behind in survival horror games, and I was like, what if I could turn that into an RPG?
Oh, that sounds neat.
Oh.
And it has
very cool.
If you like games with a lot of mechanics in them, because I like to play very story based games, and that's what my play style is. I do not see mechanics, and I just try to get away with whatever I can. But when I make them, I'm like, I like to play around with dice and like, how can I adapt these things into something that is more than just use your imagination? Because some people do not like to use their imagination, or they like the book to carry them most of the way there sometimes, and I like to make a bunch of stuff. Anyway, it's really cool. Friend of the show and constant contributor throughout the years, Cryo Cannon did the art for it, and I think it looks real good. Anyway, I'm saying this in the ether, I'm going to try my hand at itch funding, I think is what they call it, to pay for more art from her, because she does good art, and I think art is cool. But that's the show. That's the end of the show. Thank you. Valerie, Claire, Isabel, thank you all for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Glad.
Yeah, this is great.
Thank you. Glad to have people to create my little convention across the world, where we're typically this group of people. When are we going to wind up in the same convention? Probably never in all our existences. But this,
Who knows?
No, the indie world is small.
yes,
You never
yeah,
know.
it is.
Yeah.
But the world,
I've surprisingly made connections with people that, like, I went out to New York to meet somebody that I met through somebody else.
yeah, it's a small big world out here. And speaking of small big things, this show is a small big show, and I'm ending the show. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.